All right, everyone, welcome to the discussion. I'm here with kind of a recent friend and a therapist named William, as you can see on the screen. William, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you, John. I'm excited, man.
Yeah, so a little bit about you. Well, I'll share a little bit about what we're talking about first. We're talking about the big five. We're going to go over the fundamentals, some of the application, how it was derived, to kind of give you guys a great feel for it, and those of you who already are familiar with it, to be able to use it a little better. This is, I think, popularized on the big scene by Peterson, by Jordan Peterson, even though it predates him and other scientists and social scientists. But we're here to discuss that and dig into that. Just for my audience, I've talked a little bit about the big five. Um, I've been, I've tried to be careful to point out that it's a very valid system. It has a lot of value to it. I've been somewhat critical of proponents of it because they seem to wage war on the system that I use, which is fair, but I think there are some short-sightedness there as well. So all that to be said, I do find a lot of value with the system. I think the best thing about it in terms of the practical application is that it can stand independently and it can also join in any other personality system, which is a testament to its validity, I think. So William, just a little bit about you. I'll give some broad strokes here, and you can fill in as you wish. So what I know about you is that you were former professional in the tech industry, did some programming. I'm assuming I don't know a lot about tech, but and that you know have gone through changes and developments and chose to go a different direction and are now a therapist. And what I believe that the big five is something you use on the daily, if I know correctly. And now you're on a kind of a different path and more focused on humans, so, I guess. So, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, let's see. It would be a long story to kind of describe that transition from tech to doing more psychology and counseling, and so
Yeah.
I'll just kind of um, bring about some of the broad strokes of that, and especially as it relates to our conversation today. So I was pretty interested in Eastern spiritual practices, um, and for a long time was big into meditation, and was kind of hitting this wall in my practice where it felt like parts of my personality I was almost learning to like let go of, or how would I say,
Like emptying yourself.
sacrifice. Yeah,
Yeah.
emptying yourself, and what you're emptying yourself of is kind of your personality, including your
Right.
preferences, kind of who you are in a sense. And that seemed to be exactly where those practices were leading. And so I seemed to be doing it correct. But then I started having the question of like, well, how do I act in the world if my personality seems to be infinitely malleable? And I was kind of trying to do some work at the time that wasn't exactly in alignment with I think what my personality is now, being able to look back and say that.
Right.
And so I was wondering, like, do I have a personality? If so, what is it? Like, how can I know that it's real and not just something that I'm making up, or that I would kind of like to be the case? And so eventually finding the big five is what, um, just through my own interest in trying to solve that problem, that's what began to give me some answers to, okay,
Yeah.
does personality exist? And the answer is yes, it does. Anyway, so that as well as many other things is partly what drew my interest away from tech and more into
Yeah.
psychology.
It's interesting describing this journey because um, it sounds like you went very metaphysical, letting go of assumptions, letting go of thinking and whatnot. And the reason I bring that up is because of all the systems, the big five feels like the most real, the most concrete, the one you can feel the most. So at least from my reaction to what you're sharing, I can see how that system particularly, based on your journey from kind of this hyper abstraction of this spirituality to coming to contact with the big five in such a way that's it's the hardest to dismiss, I think, of all this different personality systems.
Yeah.
Was that a valuable aspect of it to you that drew you out of your personality emptying stage?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it very much was, because it showed me like there are things, and it wasn't just the big five that showed me this, but among other things, the big five revealed that there are things just as true and real as the conversation we are having.
Yeah.
Or the computer screen in front of me is a better example.
Right.
That we cannot see, touch, feel, taste any of that.
Right.
That truth exists beyond our physical plane that we can
Our
see through our
sensory world.
senses.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so to move in a little bit to the discussion here of, I want to start with a little bit of a benefit analysis, because we're going to get into some real technical stuff and some history, some how the system was derived. But first, I want to talk about, what's good about it. What does it give us that someone who doesn't have it lacks? Whether this is a couple in their relationship with each other, someone in the workforce trying to pick a job, trying to pick a career, dealing with a boss, dealing with tough situations. Just from a broad view, what does it have to offer to people who are unfamiliar with it or are just learning it? Why should they care about this? How would it benefit them?
Sure. So, I mean, there are many ways I could answer this question, but one that comes to mind is that the Big Five provides us a, a sufficient vocabulary with which we can communicate about personality.
Okay.
And that'll become more clear as we get into like how this thing was created. And
Right.
it won't be perhaps as technical as to scare people away. At least I'm hoping not. We can kind of follow from start to finish how this thing came to be. But that's maybe the biggest benefit that you get is we say, okay, personality in a sense can fit in this box. We can understand the contents of this box, and then,
Mm-hmm.
well, once you can actually have the names of things, then you have a sort of power over them that you didn't have before.
Yeah. So it's a kind of I don't want to use the word exhaustive because personality is very complex, but as far as systems go, I think the Big Five would claim to be among the most exhaustive because of how it was derived and because of really the fundamental basis it draws from, mainly
Yeah.
claiming to be biologically based. Would you agree with that? Like, is that what the system's claiming to be?
So
As close to exhaustive as you can get without being exhausting?
sure. I think one of the huge benefits of the Big Five is that it doesn't claim to be that exhaustive of a tool, actually. And what
Okay.
I mean by that, so like it gives us a language and a framework to understand personality, and that's it. Like it doesn't tell us a whole lot about um, morality,
Right.
spirituality, like religious ideas, how people develop. Although like some of that is in the Big Five, it's pretty limited in what it tells us.
Yeah. So
Which I feel, yeah, go ahead.
its purpose is mainly to just show you how it is at first. Like it's not claiming to show you here's what you should do based on this knowledge. It's just mostly a fact that you have to decide what to do with.
And
Is that right?
yeah, anything that you do based on what you see in your Big Five results, it'll
Okay.
almost be kind of common sense. At least that's
Okay.
how I view it. Maybe
Yeah.
it's an overreach to say that, but hopefully that'll become clear as we start to actually dive into what this thing is.
So do you use this explicitly with your clients? Do you use this in the background? I guess, like, why do you bring it to the table, either explicitly or implicitly with your clients?
Yeah. So part of being a counselor is sometimes every day having a new person in your chair or many new people in your office, and you're trying to get a sense of who this person is based on not that much information. And so
Right.
if I just did this based on my own life experience, the boxes that I'm going to put that person into as I try and understand them and almost like pattern match to, okay, here's a
Mhm.
particular presenting problem and a presenting personality.
Right.
What can I draw from to offer invitations to this person as they change their direction?
Okay.
And so if I'm just coming in with my own preconceptions, that pattern matching is not going to be as what I say, as exhaustive, as scientifically validated. It's going to be a pretty subjective thing. Be like,
Right.
oh well, this dude reminds me of my uncle.
Right.
Had this
Therefore,
problem. Yeah, and
right.
like that's a caricature. So I don't want to say that that's what you do without the big five, but um, and so what it allows me to do is, well, first have names for the big traits that anyone brings into a session, and for those to be exhaustive enough that if I understand where this person lies on those five traits, um, oh, so much can be done with that.
Yeah.
One thing that I happen to, or one thing I find myself communicating with clients all the time is they'll tend to come in with like at least one dimension of their personality that's causing them some problems in their life. For instance, someone comes in, they're very agreeable, and we'll get into more of what these traits mean and how they're related later. But someone comes in there who's very agreeable. They are like self-sacrificial. They only take care of other people's needs and always sacrifice their own needs for the good of others. And that can lead to a lot of resentment.
Right.
However, it's also like that person's compassionate. They're a joy to be around, typically, right?
Right.
Depending on other things. And so there are strengths associated with that, but they're being taken advantage of. And they need to learn how to grow some teeth so they can say no whenever they need to guard their time and
Right.
resources. Anyway, so in bringing in labels here, I can say to someone like, look, you seem to be this way. I don't know if that resonates with you or not, but you seem to be this way. Here are the great things about that trait, that temperament. Here are some of the struggles, and now let's focus on how we can ameliorate some of these struggles.
So what I'm hearing is it gives them first a sense of self-awareness of knowing, okay, that's normal because of this, because not because of something that happened to me necessarily. It's just part of my inclinations. But I'm also hearing that you use it to kind of mark the road of how things might change or what needs to happen if a certain result wants to be accomplished. Is that fair to characterize it as such?
Sure, it lays out the landscape for us of like here's where you are, in terms of agreeableness again.
Right.
Here's the problems in your life, perhaps because of this being the case, which that can be because of their temperament, or not their temperament, their nature, their biological system, right? Brain
Mm-hmm.
structures, etc. All of that whole mess, that could be part of it, or it could be what happened to them in the past, trauma, nurture type things,
Right.
birth order. And so it's all condensed down into one number that you give this person essentially.
Right.
But
Okay.
it can give us some ideas of where to go from here.
Have you noticed a pattern of you talked about agreeableness, but of
Yeah.
one or two or three traits that kind of bring people to therapy the most, or that
Yeah.
require the most guidance or therapy from you or from other counselors?
Sure. Yeah. No. There are three dimensions of the big five that I see causing problems all the time. Agreeableness is a
Right.
huge one,
Yeah.
and women tend to struggle with this more than men, just because your average very agreeable person is no your most agreeable person is typically female, and problems tend to
Right.
happen on the extremes. And so if someone's like really really agreeable to the point where they need to come into counseling because they can't say no to people, that's something that I see somewhat often.
So just real quick,
Yeah,
high agreeable people often struggle with boundaries. They self-sacrifice. They don't stand up for themselves. Are those? Would you agree that just as a quick characterization, that's some of the struggles that are associated with it?
sure. Yeah, kind of on the negative side, yeah.
Right. I'm thinking.
So Peterson puts it like this, and I think this is a really good formulation, that being high in agreeableness is a negotiation strategy where we both lay out our needs in front of us, like you, John, and me. We both lay
Mhm.
out our needs, and I say, forget my needs, let's focus all on yours.
Right.
The negotiation strategy is like everything you need, nothing I need,
Yeah.
in the extreme case. And
Right.
again, it becomes a bit of a caricature. There's more nuance to it, of course.
Right.
Anyway, but agreeableness is one issue that I see people a lot for.
Okay.
Also, being on the very disagreeable side of things, which we
Okay.
haven't talked about too much.
Sure.
This is where people can be very And like, by the way, I don't care about you at all. That's where we get on the pathological side of disagreeableness. Um, anyway, so inculcating the the awareness that empathy perhaps is important sometimes.
Right. Right. It's worth your consideration.
It's worth your consideration, yeah. And already we're hinting at the fact that your personality can change. It's not like it is set in stone, and we can modulate it somewhat, although maybe we're going to have some, how would I say, some almost home base in our personality that just feels natural and normal to us, but we don't have to try so hard to make that personality
Right.
manifest itself. Anyway, the next trait that I see causing problems, and this one is probably a given, but neuroticism.
Mhm.
Sensitivity to negative emotion,
Right.
or another way of putting it is um, sensitivity to the perspective to the possibility of pain.
Yeah.
So it,
So this is
yeah,
like likely high anxiety. This is likely, well, a lot of other things, but just as a brief thing, anxiety is
yeah.
what I've learned to
So
associate with it.
anxiety can be there for sure.
Okay.
In addition to depression and volatility.
Okay.
And so this is just a big cluster of kind of all the negative emotions that a human can feel. And you might imagine whenever you get, higher and higher along that dimension with your personality, you're going to want to seek help because it's a difficult place to be.
Yeah, I think when people think of therapy or medication or things like that, they're probably often thinking of traits that are often associated with a neurotic person,
Yeah.
of the depression, the anxiety, the is being like overwhelmed and helpless. Are those associated somewhat with neuroticism as well?
Perhaps so. Yeah. Like, but I could see someone who's pretty high in trait withdrawal wanting to kind of pull back, say it's too much. I can't contend with all of this. I'm going to retreat.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I recall Peterson in the course, the Big Five course he did, describing neuroticism as he was comparing it to extroversion, where extra people high in extroversion um, don't see the roadblocks as much towards a goal. They see the checkpoints, they see the
Mhm.
things that are going well. And then
Yeah.
someone higher in neuroticism sees all the ways things could go wrong along the path. Um,
Yeah.
and if that's true, it's kind of a rough card for just being on constant watch, maybe. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. It can be hard on people. And yet
right,
there are certain situations where you need neurotic people around.
right, and we'll get into that because this is like
Yeah.
it's not intuitive at all. Everyone, as we learn more about the traits, people would pull out a couple and then be like, I don't want that one.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Thankfully, there is a use to it, and the fact that it exists is evidence in of itself that it has some use. So,
Yeah.
all right. So let's get into some of the nitty gritty here. First, let's start a little general. Can we go through each of the five traits as such and just give brief descriptions of what they are, maybe what they are not, and
Sure. Sure.
start there?
Yeah. So let's start with conscientiousness. Conscientiousness behind IQ is the best predictor of lifetime success.
Mhm.
And so this is a trait that is pretty highly prized in our society, in the meritocracy in which we live. It has to do with industriousness and orderliness. Which, by the way, as an aside, so I'm going to be listing off each of the big five, which have been around for quite some time. I think they were
Mhm.
solidified in the 90s. Peterson's research team, as far as I understand, they went through and generated two sub traits for each of the five big traits.
Each traits. Right. So
Um,
there's 15 total. There's five big ones, and each one
each
has two sub, as you said. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. And when we get into kind of how the big five was formulated,
Mhm.
it'll be a little bit more clear, like how we can have all of these words related to each other and what the relationship is there.
Okay.
And so we can just say that in this
Do you
first case,
want to do you want to just start there instead? Because it might be more intuitive to start
yeah,
with the
let
derivation.
let's do that, yeah.
Okay.
Because this for me, we can talk about the theory all day long, and that's interesting and useful perhaps, but
Yeah.
for me, really, what was the kicker was how this was generated.
Right.
because it was not generated like your typical psychological theory, which is, you know, Jung saw a lot of patients and he
Right.
had some ideas about how personality could be. He kind of made some axiomatic assumptions, and then
Hmm.
from there he like formulated his understanding of personality, right? So it was
Right.
very much like, you know, I'm the philosopher kind of having all these experiences, you know, and I'm informing those from all sorts of different perspectives, and then I generate a theory, lay it on top of reality as it's presenting itself to me
Right.
with as best a fit as I can manage. The big five is very different. And so at the root of the big five is linguistic analysis. What it did, or well, what the researchers did in order to create the big five was look at the language humans use to describe each other, get a lot of data about how people would describe each other and themselves. And we'll talk about each of these in more detail.
Right.
And then they saw in that data basically different, and this is the one that's hard to put words to, but they saw that, you know, say we had a questionnaire of 1,000 questions about personality,
Hmm.
or just statements like, I tend to be compassionate,
Yeah.
I'm a loving person, those being two examples. um, if I took that questionnaire with just those two questions on it, although of course there's many more, I would answer the same way for each of those, right? I'm a loving person, I
Right.
tend to be compassionate. You would probably answer the same way, even though maybe you
Right.
and I are going to answer different.
Right.
Give that test to thousands of people. Each person within that same test, they answer pretty similarly. And so what that means is those two questions are measuring perhaps the same thing,
Right.
perhaps something similar. What they're pointing to, they're pointing in the same direction,
Right.
right?
Okay.
And so what a method called factor analysis allowed us to do, or allowed these researchers to do, was to look at all this data and analyze what questions seem to clump together in that they appear to be measuring the same thing.
So if you take 10 people and they answered several of the questions in similar fashion, you could assume that they have at least one or two things in common. Uh, Whatever that is, they didn't have a name for it yet, but they said yes to these questions, so we can assume that they are probably similar in something.
Yeah, and so I want to make it really clear that, and perhaps I missed this, but it's within individual test takers. So like, you know,
Okay.
among each of our 10 test takers in this case, um, person A answered the same way for all these questions. Person B answered the same way for themselves, but perhaps person A and B had different answers.
Okay.
And if you extrapolate this with a lot of data, you see that there are some questions which the same person, when taking all of them or when answering all of them, is going to provide a similar answer.
Okay.
And so that's how
I
we got
see.
it. Yeah. So
Right.
these questions all seem to be pointing to the same truth, the same reality.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you use the word clump together. So you have your results from all this research, you have all these questions, you have all these test takers. And can you tell us a little bit about what clumping means and how that leads to the next stage?
Yeah. So I guess what I failed to mention here is like, how do we get this questionnaire in the first place, right? And so I'll briefly mention that because I think it'll be helpful. So
Sure.
to begin here, the researchers they came up with as many um, statements or questions about personality as they possibly could. You know, and until they got what seemed to be a sufficient list of questions from as many people as they could to say all of human personality, whatever that thing is, has to be described in these questions. And so if we counted all of those and we removed obvious duplicates, right?
Sure.
Let's say we were left with 1,000 of those questions that are all seemingly unique, at least to us,
Okay.
looking, you know, before performing any of the other analysis. What we have in those 1,000 questions is the big 1,000,
Okay.
which means
Of
that,
traits or characteristics that are different and non-duplicated. And if you
yeah,
go outside of that,
yeah,
if you go more than that, it starts to duplicate or starts to reiterate the same thing.
that's right. That's
Okay.
right. And
So it's
so
somewhat exhaustive, at least as a survey description of
right.
traits.
As
Right.
exhaustive as we can manage, right?
Okay.
Because we can say like there's no new like personality trait that like came out yesterday, right? Like
Right.
they've all been around for a while, or maybe there's a combination of traits that are new, but regardless, they're all captured in this huge list.
Yeah.
And I call it the Big 1000 because that's a simplistic personality model with 1,000 dimensions or 1,000 traits.
Right. Okay.
But it's not a very useful map. Like I don't know if you've ever like you've seen those atlases of like I know that the state of Missouri has one where it's like a book for the state of Missouri, and it's like every page is just a little square.
Right.
That's a map with a ton of information.
Right. Too much.
Like maybe I need that sometimes, but like if I'm trying to go to Arby's down the street,
Right.
I need a different, simpler map.
Right.
And so the Big 1000 would be kind of like that atlas book. It's just too much. And
Okay.
so like how can we make this more digestible? Well, let's take all these statements, put them in a questionnaire. So we have our questionnaire of 1,000 questions. Give it to as many people as possible. Then again, we're kind of back where we left off with all this data. And we saw, okay, again, people tended to answer similarly for some questions and similarly for other questions. That's where these clumps start to come in. So again, to use the example that I stated earlier, like the statement, I'm a loving person, and I'm a compassionate person.
I'm compassionate, right?
Yeah. I answer similarly, and let's say it's a Likert scale, so it's like a 1 to 5. 1 is like not at all. 5 is yeah, that's me.
Totally.
Let's say like I'm a 3 on both of those, right?
Okay.
Okay. That's a clump. That's a cluster.
Okay.
And the analysis that was performed, the factor analysis, it allowed for a little bit of leeway because you're looking at clumps that aren't tangible, but we are like, how would I put this? The clumps themselves are real, but there's a little bit of subjectivity and art in determining like which clumps we're going to select for. So for instance here, the hexaco, to the extent I can even talk about this, I'm kind of beginning to learn about it. It covers the same landscape of personality as the Big Five, but it has 6 dimensions instead of 5. And they add another dimension that has to do with humility. Now, humility in the Big Five is just swallowed up by agreeableness, more or less. And maybe it's split across other dimensions. And so we can split it into different dimensions. There are different numbers of dimensions, but the early researchers landed on 5.
Okay, so you could, if you wanted to, if you had the time and the drive, you could go through the 1,000 questions and separate it into 70 traits or 40 traits or 12 traits if you wanted to. Is that right?
Or 2 or whatever, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, okay. So how do we get to 5? Why 5? Why not 70 or 10 or 12?
Yeah. Well, because it's not too many and not too few.
Okay.
That's pretty much the answer. Yeah, I can't tell you exactly what was going on in the researchers' heads, and people have gone on to do, like I said, Peterson saying, here are the 10 what were they called? 10 aspects, I think his team called.
Right. Which are really, we might call sub-traits. He calls aspects, right? Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. And so well, sometimes it's useful to have 10, right? Sometimes it's useful to just have 5.
Right.
I'm sure there's times where it'd be useful to have fewer than that.
Sure.
And so it's just kind of a multi-tool.
Intuitively it makes sense. Like you don't want something too wieldy, and it covers the broad bases. But it's important for people to know that it didn't have to be 5. It could have been any other number, really.
Yeah. What it absolutely had to be was broad enough to swallow up all of personality under its under its purview.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So, related to how it was brought about, there are some philosophical assumptions, or just assumptions, that allow us to get to those 1,000 traits, that allow us to derive it the way that we did. You mentioned language. You mentioned semantics. Can you describe a bit about what had to be assumed before this could even take place, and what's still being assumed as we're, using the traits?
Sure. And so, because there's no research or intervention apart from, to an extent, picking clusters that make sense and that are offering us utility. Apart from that, this whole process is strictly empirical, where we start with these questions, we administer surveys, and we take that data and look at the dimensions of personality that it tells us, that it reveals to us. And so for all of that to make sense, we have to go back to the beginning and say, like, well, what assumptions are required to believe that this is a valid measure of personality at all, right? And so those two assumptions are, one being, the first is that human beings have the language to describe each other.
Yeah.
Like, we can more or less describe each other with language.
Yeah.
And we can think about that, like, well, how long have human beings had language? Like, as long as there have been human beings, more or less. And we've gotten pretty good at describing things in our environment, including each other.
So it's placing faith in our subjective descriptions collectively forming an objective picture, something like that?
Yes. So you can think of it like this. If I'm trying to formulate what human personality is, maybe I could attack this problem by creating a distributed system where I have, like, every element of the system, and the elements in this case would be humans, looking at each other and describing what they see, right?
Okay.
And so an aggregate system of millions and millions of people where each one is describing themselves and the others around them. If I then take all of those descriptions and aggregate them together, I could probably assume that I have a reasonable look at what human personality actually is.
So just a quick example. This is, you look at a friend or a stranger and you say, they're kind of friendly, they're pretty creative, they're kind of outgoing. That kind of description gathered with thousands and thousands of people. That's the practical process.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's any description you can come up with in terms of personality. That
Interesting.
person gets angry easily. They're short often.
Right.
Short in terms of volatility. Like,
Okay.
anything. Anyway, so that's our first assumption. Our second assumption is that we can more or less describe our own personality. And this is a tricky one, because you might think, like, well, can we really describe our own personality?
Right.
And the answer is, like, well, can we do it perfectly? No. Can we do it with some degree of accuracy? Yeah, generally.
Okay.
There are some people who are going to want to paint themselves in a particular light, right? And they're going to have their reasons for doing so.
Right.
But generally speaking, we can get pretty close with self-description. And I'll cut to the punchline here, that the Big Five shows reliability, whether self-administered, whether you take a questionnaire yourself or if someone takes one on your behalf.
It's similar.
It's similar.
The results will be similar.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll say one more thing about this, because this is important. Like, the Big Five doesn't sort you into buckets. It's very different from the Jungian conception of personality in this way. And again, maybe I'm oversimplifying Jung's understanding here, but the Big Five is all about, how do you compare to the people around you? And so say that we go back to our questionnaire that's been administered to a lot of people, and we get our 5 dimensions out of that questionnaire, the 5 dimensions of personality, the Big Five. But then people are like, okay, well, what's my score? Right? Like, what's my personality? Like, okay, the only thing I can say based on all that data is how you compare to the other people that took the test.
So it's not drawing from anything outside of itself.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And
And
that's the
so,
empirical nature that you're talking about.
yes.
Somewhat.
And like anything else in creation, whenever you get a bunch of personality data along these 5 dimensions, it all follows the normal curve. And so what do I mean by that? So like let's take agreeableness again. So if I'm going to graph a curve here, where on my y-axis is the number of people, and on the x-axis is how agreeable that person is. We're going to get a distribution that looks like this, where skinny on the sides, fat in the middle. The most people are going to be 50th percentile for agreeableness. That's the median, the mean, and the mode of our data set here, at least for agreeableness.
Measure.
Yeah. Now, on the edges, we're going to have very few people who are extremely high in agreeableness on one end and extremely low in agreeableness on the other end.
These are the 95, 98, 99.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So
And
I have
yeah.
extroverted thinking trickster. Can you repeat why most people will be 50% in the 50%
Sure.
mark? And what you're describing is a bell curve, right? Is that
Bell curve? Exactly. Yeah, bell curve.
Okay.
So, or a normal distribution. So there's
Right.
this weird thing that happens where if you measure anything and you measure a lot of instances of that thing, I'll make this more concrete in a minute, you get a normal distribution.
Okay.
So height, this is a perfect example. Take 1 million people and measure each of their height, right? And then graph it. It looks like this. There's a lot of people in the middle, right? Like, 5
Right.
or whatever. Like
that short range or that range that most people are going to be in. Is that?
Yes.
No, okay.
Yeah, and
Right.
there are very few people who are like 7 feet tall.
Right.
There are very few people that are like 3 feet tall, right? A
So
lot of people in the middle.
That middle part, is that the same thing as average height equals, like the average of something, is that 50% mark, that the bell curve tip top?
So when the data is perfect, which theoretically, if you get enough data, it becomes perfect. And what I mean by that is the median. So the data point that occurs at the exact middle of the data set, the mode, so the data point that is most occurring, and the average, which the average of all that data set, all those numbers converge.
Wow, in the middle.
Yeah. Again, that's more of like a perfect theory thing, although we can adjust our data sets to make that the case.
So attaching that to the big 5 measurements,
yeah,
it follows the same pattern relatively?
Relatively so, yes.
Wow.
And IQ is the same way. So IQ and the big 5, at least in my mind, those are kind of cut from the same cloth, where we make some assumptions, we administer a test or a questionnaire, and then we rank order people. That's it. Very straightforward.
Interesting. Okay. So just hearing this, like my own reaction of things that are derived with only a couple assumptions that we can look at, like you mentioned, and don't pull from outside of itself. When they fall into patterns like you're describing, it's kind of hard to ignore those patterns, isn't it? It's kind of hard to try and justify them away.
Yeah.
When there are people who don't believe in the big 5, and I'm kind of, just hearing that, the bell curve stuff, how it was derived, it seems pretty convincing to me. But why do some people push back against it? Why do some people question its validity?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's probably hard to know for sure, of course, right? Like why someone would push back. I mean, I imagine though that they say, well, it doesn't how do I put it? It doesn't capture all the nuance of what it means to be a person. Something like that, perhaps. And they're like, that's true. It doesn't. But it's also not meant to. Right? Like it's meant to be a very narrowly defined conception of personality. That's it. And so I think people who are perhaps more used to, what do you say, richer, more theory heavy approaches to psychology
Hmm.
They're left a little high and dry with the big five because it doesn't tell you much. It's not a worldview.
Right.
It is not a religion. It's not something that requires a lot of leaps of faith. I mean, we talked through the two major leaps of faith required to take
Right.
this lens on, this worldview on, or not a worldview.
But there's no values attached to it, allegedly. There's no path forward attached to it implicitly. You have to decide what you're going to do with it. Unlike, and it's somewhat true for the other systems. Like, they don't necessarily tell you exactly what to do, but
Yeah,
a lot of the other systems are more, it's implied what you should do. Like, you should
sure.
fix that, or deal with that, or overcome that. That's
Yeah,
a big thing in the system I use, even though that's still something we put on it. But the big
yeah,
five is not like that. Can you describe why? Like, why is it not directive
yeah.
in that
So
in that way?
so it's hard to be directive whenever presented with a set of facts. So if I'm like, okay, I am this tall and I weigh this much, that's data, and like maybe it's useful, and I can know those numbers to, with precision, right? But what I do with that has to do with so many other, with my motives, my aims in the world, like where I'm headed. Am I trying to lose weight? Am I trying to gain weight? Right? Is my height something that is like a source of pride for me?
Right.
Is it something that I'm ashamed of? Do I not think about it at all? Right? Like
So
all these
so
values, we can't necessarily like, um, what would I say? Values don't emerge from the data,
right.
at least in this case.
Okay. So in the truest sense of the word, the big five is a tool. It is non-discriminate. It's sitting there in the tool shed, and its existence is, it's there. That's what the empirical filter of it claims.
Yeah.
And we have to decide how and why and if we're going to use it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a bitter pill for people who, and I'm talking like I'm not one of these people. It's a bitter pill for us because like
Right.
we all want the thing that's going to kind of define our worldview,
Right.
right? Um, and
To
especially in
it's kind of like
psychology.
to outsource, take the weight off the decision making too. Of, if you describe a trait in a way that provokes action, then that decision's kind of alleviated for you somewhat. But a tool is, you have to take on the burden of responsibility for choosing how you're going to use it. I think that's what's different
Yeah.
somewhat.
And that's part of why I like this system so much is because it is like it's the great unifier. It gives us a language that we can describe ourselves with that doesn't presuppose like, are you a Jungian? Are you a Freudian? Like, are
Right.
you a behaviorist, right? No matter what position you're coming from, you don't need to buy into very much to adopt this language, this lens.
Well, and that's fair, because to allow for those other theories, even a lot of the stuff I do, or Freudian psychoanalysis, or really most anything else out there, requires a lot more assumptions to be made,
Yeah.
um, particularly because of the non-empirical whole that it is brought from.
Sure.
Um, so it's kind of a blunt instrument in some way, the big five, which
Yeah.
is to its credit, but it also creates some discomfort, as we'll talk
No
about later.
doubt. Yeah, no doubt.
Okay. So with that derivation, let's get into the traits now. We've hinted at most of them, but do you want to start with conscientiousness? Do you want to start
Yeah,
there?
let's start there. Yeah. Yeah, so picking up where we left off earlier, conscientiousness has two main aspects. One is industriousness,
Okay.
one is orderliness.
Okay.
And so whenever you think of industriousness, this is people who are industrious tend to get the work done that they are assigned. They're hard workers.
Okay.
They meet goals, they meet or exceed expectations. They Yeah, work is something that perhaps comes naturally to them, or it's a skill set that they can naturally use.
So is this like task completion, follow through, things like that?
All of that, yeah, yeah. So If it's useful, I have a list of what you say, descriptions here for each trait. I can read this off for
Sure.
industriousness.
Please.
Carry out my plans, and this is straight from Peterson's course, by the way. Carry out my plans, use my time efficiently, find it easy to get down to work, get things right, finish what I start, put my mind on the task at hand, get things done quickly, always know what I'm doing, make decisions promptly, and focused.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that paints a picture of someone who's like pretty diligent, like someone you'd want to hire to do a particular job, right?
Right.
Which is why Peterson was trying to get companies to administer the Big Five as part of their hiring process.
Right.
Yeah, that's a whole story that he tells. And
So
then, yeah,
what I hear, just as a single word from that, is reliability, attached to industriousness, but particularly attached to high conscientiousness, that they're reliable.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How would you react to that?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Like, you can trust that person to get stuff done.
Okay.
If they say they're going to do it, they do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've this is just an interesting thing. How much do I want to go here? There are many people I've known, and many people that I've known that have criticized others for, being dishonest or being promising more than they can deliver. I've had a hard time associating with those people at times, because it feels like a moral issue.
Mm-hmm.
However, what I'm hearing also is that it's not necessarily that people who are low in conscientiousness are not telling the truth. It's that it's something else, maybe. And already I'm kind of assigning a moral description to it, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I guess it gives lens to people high in conscientiousness, as he said in the course, can tend towards being very judgmental. People low in conscientiousness, because they're not necessarily reliable. And reliability is something, at least in our culture, extremely valued. I don't know if it's the same in other cultures, but this challenges that, because
Yeah.
it says maybe we don't have the right to judge someone low in conscientiousness. Maybe it's not this massive character flaw in a moral sense.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the way they are.
Yeah. So I kind of want to say two things here. The first is, there are some contexts where that judgment is more valid than others.
Okay.
So, like, if in a workplace context, if you're a boss, like trying to hire people that are just going to be on time for their shift, right? If you've got people that can't be reliable enough to show up on time, that's a problem in that context. And the judgment would be like, you can't work here anymore because of your unreliability. It's not like, you're unfixable. It's just, this is not the place for you right now. It's not saying there's nowhere for you, just not here. So, like, that's one side of things, that it's practical to need reliability from people in some circumstances, which is why conscientiousness is coveted by, corporate America.
Everyone, yeah.
Yeah. Although, like, creative people can sometimes be hampered by high conscientiousness. It's like too much order restricts the creative process. And so, whenever you lose some of that ability to follow through and be reliable, you gain a little bit of the ability to, like, invite the muse into your life, perhaps.
Right.
Again, like, there are also people who are highly conscientious and high in openness to experience, which is the dimension of creativity. Right. And so people are all over the place here.
One way to conceptualize it is, it's really hard to be creative when you're busy all the time doing stuff. And I view conscious people as kind of being busy, like they do stuff a lot, and they get stuff done, and they have, my impression of them, I'm not one of them, of people high in conscientiousness, is that they always have something on their mind that they should get done or could get done or might get done or should do.
Yeah.
And that's tough to be creative and when all that stuff is going through your head.
Yeah. Yeah, because they are more sensitive to details and tasks than someone who's sober in conscientiousness. And that
Would you
does
say
have cost.
the energy that I see with it is like things are pulling at them more often, more of the time, more requiring of their attention to the tasks, the details, things of that nature.
Yeah. But it doesn't really have a negative connotation necessarily, though. It can, whenever conscientiousness becomes pathological, and the temptation of someone who's highly conscientious is too much order, too much disgust, which orderliness has to do with disgust. That's the trait we haven't talked about, or the aspect.
It's kind of like sterility is what I associate that with.
Yes.
Yes. Life cannot grow. Things are perfectly sterile.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's fun. So, I wish we had fleshed out all the other traits already so we could talk more about the higher level, how they interact. But
sure. Okay. So industriousness is a part of consciousness. Is the aspect that's associated with task completion.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the phrase that comes to mind for just as a single word. Is it more about just like getting things done, focus, tasks, things like that? Checklists.
Checklists can maybe get a little bit more into orderliness. Okay. That's more organization, perhaps. But this is like you could have someone who's very industrious but not at all organized or orderly.
True.
Which is interesting because they're both under conscientiousness.
Right.
So there's so much variation here that we see in people.
That's really interesting. I hadn't considered that, but I have known some people who are like executives and administrators who get a lot done, but their house is kind of a mess.
Yeah.
And it's shocking because it seems like those would go hand in hand, but it doesn't have to.
Yeah. Typically they do go hand in hand. And like, I mean, we have one trait above both of them that subsumes both of them. So yeah.
All right. So that's anything else you want to add about industriousness before we move to?
Let me see. I've got a few fun facts for these. No, not for industriousness. Okay. So
nothing fun about that.
Nothing fun, just hard work. And so orderliness would be the next one. This has to do with kind of how it sounds, like being organized, being clean. These people tend to have, what would you say, like organized environments. What else would I say here? They're good with administrative tasks, like think accountant, like engineer would have to be pretty high in orderliness. Well, perhaps. I'll read the descriptions here.
Sure.
Keep my belongings organized, like order, keep things tidy, follow a schedule, am bothered by messy people, want everything to be just right, am bothered by disorder. This is a dimension that's associated with being grossed out or disgusted by order, by the way. Or sorry, by disorder. Disorder.
Like judging someone like a slob or something.
Yeah.
That's likely an orderly trait coming out of the judger.
Yes, there could be some low politeness there as well. Thinking like I'm better than this person because these people like routine. They see that the rules are observed and they want every detail taken care of. People who are conservative tend to be higher in
build the wall, right?
Which is the funny, like literal, what would you say, expression of orderliness, which is keep the pathogens away.
Right.
Like put up a firm barrier to protect the homeland, protect what's inside.
Right. In this case. So it's about boundaries. Like, okay, the task completion is what comes to mind when I think of industriousness. Boundaries is what comes to mind when I think of orderliness. But it's more like things being in their proper place and being not protected, but organization, maybe something like that.
Well, and protected is in there too, because like I don't want that disorder to come into my
right. That's right.
my little walled off garden.
Right. Yeah, and that makes sense. Just like people, I've been into houses of people who are like really conservative, and they like it's so neat in there. It's actually really calming for me, but I'm like I could never ever maintain this. And
Yeah.
they don't have to be conservative, but the ones that come to mind definitely were. Okay, so together these two traits give us a picture of what conscientiousness is in its expressions. Is there anything else that you want to say about conscientiousness as an overall trait?
Conscientiousness can help you, well, increasing your conscientiousness can help you modulate other traits.
Okay, right. Because these traits do interact with each other across the board in some way.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And like a good example of that is, let's talk about neuroticism next.
Sure.
And like when we're talking about negative emotion, fear, anxiety, depression, withdrawal, which are all components of neuroticism.
Right.
In therapy, people who are struggling with some sort of phobia or intense fear, one of the ways that we can help them manage that is what's called systematic desensitization, which is basically a manner of, in a conscientious way, exposing them bit by bit to the thing that is scary for them. So like creating a plan, sticking to the plan, getting the work done. That's all conscientiousness. That's proven to help people overcome fears.
Okay.
And Peterson talks about this all the time.
Right. It's exposure therapy mixed with, I guess it's sort of exposure therapy.
Therapy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So neuroticism. Give us a view of neuroticism.
Sure. So the two major components of neuroticism are volatility and withdrawal. Volatility is, getting angry fast.
Easily upset.
Yes, being easily upset. I'll read the descriptions for that one. Get angry easily, often get irritated, get upset easily. You can see how, if we had those in our questionnaire, they'd be all kind of measuring the same thing, right? It's kind of obvious. Lose control of my emotions, change my mood a lot, often lose my composure. Am a person whose moods go up and down easily, am easily annoyed, get easily agitated, can be stirred up easily.
Okay. This is like someone who's touchy, who's sensitive. Maybe isn't the right word because that could be something else, but maybe just touchy. Who's kind of reactive, perhaps.
Reactive for sure. Emotionally labile. Their mood can change on a dime.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Another common trait to see coming into therapy, people who are high in volatility.
Okay, so that is volatility. It's he described it as kind of I think he said defensive aggression, but it's kind of has this, would you say, like this animated nature to it, this explosiveness?
It certainly can be explosive. Yeah. There's little time to think whenever volatility is manifesting itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Withdrawal is the other dimension of neuroticism. And this is a little bit more clearly associated with like depression, anxiety, that sort of thing. It's like whatever the thing is that's making me fearful, I am like too afraid to feel the pain that I might feel if I go and contend with that thing.
Right.
And so I'm going to feel the anxiety instead, perhaps, so I don't have to feel the pain.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I feel like I need to nail it down a little bit more. Like, in the course, Peterson talks about how fear is a marker for damage, and we feel anxious of the things that we fear. Yeah.
So okay. So someone high with withdrawal, they substitute fear for anxiety, or they substitute the damage for being anxious about the damage that could happen.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And so you can think about it like this. If I'm a really withdrawn person, again, if I'm high in neuroticism in this way, I'm going to be anxious about anything that can cause me damage. And because of that, I'm going to be pretty good at avoiding that damage because I'm incentivized through my
Right.
emotions to organize my life so that I'm not going to feel that
Right.
scary, painful thing.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay, the word that comes to mind overall for neuroticism is threat detection, threat avoidance, sensitivity to the way things could go wrong.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think all of that hits the nail on the head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add to
So
neuroticism?
I'll just list out the description just for completeness.
Sure.
Often feel blue and filled with doubts about things. Feel uncomfortable with myself. Feel threatened. Often feel depressed and easily discouraged and easily embarrassed. Become overwhelmed by events. Am afraid of many things.
Wow.
So that's
Yeah.
withdrawal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What's next for us?
Let's see. I actually have a few more points to share on neuroticism, if that's all right.
Sure.
Yeah. So withdrawal is associated with the animalistic freezing response.
Okay.
Like we see danger and we freeze in response to it.
Okay.
Whereas volatility, as you had mentioned, is defensive aggression. And it's also worth mentioning that the number one predictor of divorce is both members of the relationship being high in neuroticism.
Being highly neurotic. Wow.
And that doesn't mean technically that like if you're both high in neuroticism, you're going to get divorced, right? Like nothing here is like a prophecy of like, oh, if your big five personality is this, then this will happen. It's like
Right.
It doesn't really
It's
work
not
like that.
it's not your horoscope.
Yeah, it's not in your horoscope, but like the likelihood is higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't say many predictive things about the traits other than that people high in neuroticism, when they get other people high in neuroticism, it usually ends badly.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, not that there isn't hope if
Right.
that happens, but it's harder on both people. It's like having, two alarm bells going off with no one around to switch them off.
To put him out. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
It can be hard.
escalation if I've ever seen it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so that's neuroticism. Let's do agreeableness next.
Sure.
Yeah, so agreeableness is a really interesting trait. There's a lot going on with it. You can think about it, perhaps like it's best to think about high agreeableness as the dimension of maternal care.
Okay.
And so it's kind of self-sacrificial love, valuing the needs of others way above the needs of yourself. And you see this in mothers. It's like an instinctual thing. On the opposite end of agreeableness, on the disagreeableness side, we have, and again, like whenever we get way out there on the tail, right, we have predatory aggression. Again, stuff we had kind of touched already. The two sub-traits or aspects of agreeableness are compassion and politeness. And so much is packed in these. So compassion, people who are compassionate are warm. People like to be around them, not because they're boisterous and like talk a lot, but because like they really care about you.
Right.
And you can tell whenever they ask you how you're doing, they really want to know the answer.
They actually want to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're compassionate.
Right.
Politeness is how do I put this? Being kind of tactful, knowing when not to say that thing or when to say that thing. People who are very polite, like it's associated with humility in a sense of like not thinking they're better than other people.
Okay.
People who are high in politeness, which is interesting. And you can start to see why other researchers said, well, maybe we should add the humility dimension in. But again, like I think the big five is a good enough tool.
So just as a quick reaction, the image that comes to mind when you blend being polite and this humility and this compassion is like not thinking you have the right to make someone else uncomfortable or to make them feel bad. That's what emerges for me when I think of politeness. It's like I don't have the right to impose this feeling on you that's unpleasant potentially.
Yeah. There's a sort of respect there.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, I'll read through the politeness descriptions because I think it speaks to what you're saying here. Respect authority. Believe others are equal to me. Hate to seem pushy. Don't take advantage of others. Avoid imposing my will on others. Rarely put people under pressure. Don't insult people. Avoid conflict. Avoid fights. Consider others' interests.
Okay. So conflict avoidant is the thing that comes out from that too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so like, and this is all separate from compassion, right? So like you can be a compassionate person who really cares about others, but and that would make you high in compassion. But if you're high in politeness, maybe like you're saying, you don't want to fight.
Right.
But it's not quite withdrawal. It's not like I'm afraid of the fight necessarily, although that could be there as well.
Okay.
It's more like I just don't want to hurt people's feelings. I don't want to make my needs known.
Right. It doesn't have to be anxious exactly, even though we might associate it with anxiety.
Yes.
Okay.
And so this is decoupling the anxiety from that feeling. Yeah.
So as an example of this, someone high in compassion and lower in politeness might be, I've met a few people like this. They're very interesting. They might be like a nurse who's like just kind of bossing you around, telling you, don't do that. That's, stuff like that. But they do actually care about you getting better. But how they communicate about it isn't trimmed or isn't warm necessarily. Like blunt. I think he said blunt and low politeness are somewhat synonymous, if I recall.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with that. And people who are lower in politeness don't get resentful because they'll just tell you what's on their mind.
Right. They say what they mean. More unfiltered, I guess.
Right. Which is a good cure for resentment, is to actually say what's on your mind.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
I have a harder time picturing someone high in politeness and lower in compassion. Though I suppose like a aristocratic person back in way back when, maybe that's an image of what that might look like.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We should probably keep moving here. Do you want to add anything else to that dimension? Compassion.
I'll just list a few of these descriptions. Again, you kind of get the idea, I think. Interested in other people's problems, feel others' emotions, care about others' needs, have a soft side.
Okay.
So that's our compassion.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll say one more thing about it. Low agreeableness, so being disagreeable, being low in politeness, being low in compassion, low in empathy would be another way to say that. Is the best predictor of incarceration.
That's right. And even more so with males on the far edges are lowest in that. So that already, I don't know what the word is when those traits come together. Yeah, that makes sense, especially with the respect for authority piece, which is probably maybe the biggest reason why. I don't know if that's true. That's what I would assume.
It's a big reason, surely.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, so we've hit on 3 so far. These last 2, I use them less in counseling. And it's not because they're not important, but they're just not, they don't come up as much. One is openness to experience. This is our 4th trait that we're talking about. This is a kind of a strange one. It's correlated with IQ, but it's not the same thing as IQ, as best I understand it. And it breaks down into intellect, which is how interested you are in ideas. How would I put it? When you get together with your friends, do you talk about philosophy and like, the world of ideas and that sort of thing? Or do you talk more about like down to earth concrete things?
Right.
That's a good way to judge, like, am I open or not, broadly speaking. It's so this dimension or this trait, openness to experience, broadly is associated with creativity, as we had touched on earlier. And the other subtraits, we have openness to experience, intellect right underneath it. The other subtrait is trait openness.
It's just openness.
Yeah.
This is confusing, but it's a substitute for the word creativity, but creativity doesn't capture it quite right. Is that
right? because it's like, yes, creativity is there, although I'm not sure how distinct it is between openness, at the aspect openness and the aspect intellect.
Right.
Um,
This is important.
but it also has to do with like new experiences. How open are you to trying new things, to
Okay.
changing
Right.
your worldview, right? To listening to what others say and actually being interested in it. Um, I'll read through these descriptions to help us paint
Okay.
a picture here. So we'll start with intellect. Quick to understand things, easily understand abstract ideas, can handle a lot of information, likes to solve complex problems, enjoys philosophical discussions, seek out difficult reading material, have a rich vocabulary, think quickly, learn things quickly, formulate ideas quickly. And so you can see the tie over with IQ.
Right.
But there's a relationship there.
So it's kind of, so someone high in openness, high in intellect is kind of a heady person, maybe a little detached, a little bit in their head. Whereas openness or like that creative aesthetic aspect is a little bit more adventurous, a little more, I don't want to use the word novelty because intellect can be novelty too, but it's hard to describe this without getting into other traits. I associate the creative openness thing with um, excitement over novelty, but that starts to get into some extroversion too. But
Sure.
so
Yeah.
it's hard to distinguish this for me a little bit. I
Yeah.
see like the aesthetic and then the intellectual is kind of a helpful distinction, but it's more than that too.
Yeah, although I think that's a really primary mover, the aesthetic, which is more openness versus intellectual, of course, intellect.
Right.
And I'll read the openness descriptions to help put some words to this too,
Right.
because it's very much along those lines. Enjoy the beauty of nature, believe in the importance of art, love to reflect on things, get deeply immersed in music, like poetry, notice emotional aspects of paintings and pictures, need a creative outlet, often get lost in thought, often daydream, see beauty in things others might not notice.
So that openness subtrait is also a sensitivity to beautiful things. It's a artistic sensitivity to life, something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Which is
intellect
interesting.
is
Yeah, go ahead.
and intellect is someone heady, someone philosophical, not necessarily emotionally sensitive to aesthetics. It's
Yeah.
something different.
Yeah, it's like we're getting kind of into the metaphysical realm here. It's like truth and beauty. And
Right.
like, those things
Right.
exist, but they're not concrete. So someone who's low in openness to experience is maybe a little bit less interested in those things per se, truth and beauty per se. Um,
That makes I get
yeah.
that tracks. Just as a quick aside to my audience here. So I described in another video, I was describing how the big five can be kind of reverse engineered to do some typing stuff. But on the surface, openness to experience is kind of like intuition, kind of abstraction, big picture stuff. However, there are some types who are concrete types who are high in openness, but I would really guess it's more the openness subtrait, the aesthetics. So for example, there's a lot of ISFP type artists who are concrete types, but they have this like adventurous aesthetic fascination that's like the cornerstone of their life. But it's not necessarily big picture ideation. It's like this instinctual raw desire to make stuff, to create stuff. It's a little different, and to me, just based on the 16 type model, that idea of people who are not abstract but can be high in openness, I find really fascinating, and I want to investigate that more at a later point. But it doesn't have to. You don't have to be an abstract person to be high in openness as such.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like there are people who are very low in intellect but very high in openness. So
Right.
yeah. So again, curious to think about it in that way, but that's how personality presents itself to us.
Right. Okay. All right. We got one left. Do you want to say
Yes,
anything more
sir.
to openness? Or?
Let's see.
Openness to experience rather, because openness
Yeah,
is
sure.
the subject.
So I guess in terms of intellect, this can be improved by reading and writing, which is good to know.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
openness, the subtrait, can be increased by psychedelic use.
Right. This is crazy, actually.
It's
That is
insane. It's insane. And I don't know how to feel about this. And so like I would caution anyone doing anything. I would caution against anyone doing anything to change their personality by taking a substance.
right.
Because it has apparently lasting effects.
Mm-hmm.
And like we don't know what the long-term implications of that are. Like
Right.
it's very strange. And I'm a little bit out of my depth even talking about it in the
Sure.
first place. So
Well, just to respond to that, it's not necessarily the case that more is better for any of these traits, or that
yes.
less is better.
Yes.
So as long as that's our human instinct, it's also our American instinct of more is better, but it's in this situation, it's not that easy. It's not that obvious.
Yeah.
So,
And so we have the language now to talk about some of the true differences between liberals and conservatives. Conservatives,
right.
like we talked about earlier, are going to be higher in orderliness, but low in openness.
Mm. Yeah.
Whereas liberals are high in openness, low in orderliness.
Right.
And so they might bring in ideas to revivify the society.
Mm-hmm.
Those could be useful, valid, good. They could be pathogens.
Right.
And it's hard to know the difference.
Right. And this is the validity of the conservative point of view, is if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side is it could be so much better, or you don't see all the ways it's actually bad, or it's actually going wrong. So it's this almost like this cosmic tension that is unresolvable. And I'll just share a little bit here. I get pretty frustrated with all the political hate. I get some of it, whatever, but when it comes down to personality, like these, the very disturbing implication for someone who's ultra political on one side is that the other side is it's inevitable, almost like people will always have this tension with these world. It's kind of a worldview that comes out of these traits in how I see it, at least. And this is like, we talk about the big five being kind of this impartial tool, but how we respond to this is so consequential. Like, if you face this reality of people having that makeup that makes them very much more likely to be that side of the political spectrum, you have the decision to make of, are they just stupid evil people, or is there something instinctual built into them, just as I have, that's like makes them that way? And then you have to decide, do I want to get rid of them, or do I want to work with them, or tolerate them, something like that.
Right. And it's kind of this, it's almost a birthing process of understanding where you go from thinking my personality is how others should be.
Right.
I'm gold standard, right?
Exactly.
And then,
Exactly.
the waves of life at like cripple you enough times and roll over you, sending you flying enough times to think like, okay, something's up here. I should reconsider this. And then, you know, as much as we're able, we start to develop the understanding of every personality is valid and useful in some way.
It has to be, right?
Even the people on the way outskirts of our society, the people in prison, they tell us useful things about the human condition.
Yeah.
Right? Like even if they do terrible things, it's like is it useful to study people who do evil things? Yeah. Because
Yes.
it can tell you a little bit about what the opposite of that might be.
Right.
And so not that more people should do evil things, that's not at all what I'm saying, but it's that even people who seemingly offer us nothing, we can learn from their personality.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because there are trait clusters attached to psychiatric conditions. I don't want to get into too much today, but psychopathology has a trait cluster that's somewhat attached to it. However, I've also found that people of that profile, I don't want to say that they're psychopaths. I think most of them are not. I feel kind of comfortable around them because they're very like um, not anxious. They kind of just take things as they are. They kind of figure out. They think there's a solution. They'll brainstorm ideas. I'm kind of relieved as someone who's more neurotic myself to be around people like that, and I've seen people who are not pathological but are judged as such because some of those traits are similar to people who are judged as pathological, and this is kind of I think a higher level distinction maybe, but um, that's just kind of a personal aside that um, I like some of those people who are high in openness, low in conscientiousness, high in extraversion. I think that's the trait cluster. And low in neuroticism.
Yeah, yeah. And
Anyway,
like, and add in people who are kind of impolite or disagreeable to that high extroversion, which is high positive emotion, fun to be around,
right,
talks a lot. Those people are, I think, as well, like pretty pleasant to be around. They're fun at parties. We elect them. Our politicians are this way.
right.
Uh, and
That's
yet
right.
it like there's a temptation towards narcissism there too.
Right.
Uh, which we could get into that more, but I know we haven't talked about extroversion yet, so I want to make
Yeah,
sure we
please.
have time for that. So the last of the 5 traits that we're talking about, this one again doesn't come up in therapy too often, but at least just in terms of what context I'm bringing to this, it's comprised of assertiveness and enthusiasm.
Okay.
And so again, you can think of like I think that the politician is a great example of this, being very assertive, speaking with authority,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, oh, I trust that person.
Right.
We tend to like and trust extroverted people.
They kind of air competence, like an external competence is what comes to mind. Like they give off that energy of
Mm-hmm.
I know what to do. Here's what we're going to do. Something
Right,
like that.
right.
I love that example of the politician. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of on the assertiveness side is where we get that sense of authority and competence. And then enthusiasm, this is like how much you reveal of yourself to others. So someone who's highly enthusiastic, well, first off, they're just going to be kind of bubbly, perhaps,
Right.
but they're going to tell you a lot about themselves.
Right. They share a lot. Yeah.
They share a lot.
Right.
And again, those people are kind of nice to be around because if there's ever a lull in conversation,
Right.
they fill it.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'll read through. Let's do assertiveness first, the descriptions. Take charge, have a strong personality, have talent for influencing people, know how to captivate people, see themselves as a good leader, can talk others into doing things, which is interesting. So there's an element of like, you can trust me enough that I can talk you into doing the
Right.
thing. So salesman could fall into this. I express my opinions. I'm the first to act. I have an assertive personality. That's assertiveness. On the enthusiasm side of things, make friends easily, easy to get to know, keep others close, reveal a lot about myself, warm up quickly to others, often get caught up in the excitement, um, which is it's interesting to consider. There are some people who like do not get caught up in excitement,
Right.
who are more like their momentum is just harder to get going, and then some
Right.
people who are always down regardless of what the
Right.
invitation is, right?
No matter what.
No matter what, yeah. Um, Enthusiastic people show feelings when they're happy, have a lot of fun and laugh a lot. So like if you're buddies with a non-enthusiastic person, maybe they're like deadpan, like you wouldn't know what they're feeling, but they're like elated, having the best day of their life.
Right. That's right. And you have
Yeah,
no idea. I love that.
right.
Okay, so it's a sharingness, it's an openness in communication. I don't want to use the word openness, but I think you know
Yeah.
what I mean. So enthusiasm, sharing, uh, outgoing. So there's like a social dimension, which I see from the enthusiasm, and a more, I don't know how I would conceptualize assertiveness as much. It's not as concerned with, I don't know, I don't want to say people, but it has like it, to me it has a accomplishment mindset built into it. Like, we're gonna do this. Here's a solution. I'm gonna drag you with me. Whereas enthusiasm is kind of more open, more, again, I don't want to use the word open, but I want to distinguish these traits a little bit from each other. and I'm not sure. This one's a little harder.
It's tricky. Yeah, it's tricky because like anytime we try and grab it, it's like we're pulling in these other traits as well.
That's right.
So like, when we think of the leader who's going to influence the team to like do this project, it's like,
Right.
well, how much of that is their industriousness saying like, I'm doing this
Right.
work right now versus
That's
openness is almost like a transparency of the person
right.
of like, who I am is coming through authentically to drive us in a particular direction.
That's right.
And there's also an attention seeking there too.
Okay.
They're like, yes, it's social. Someone who's very like the trait of extroversion is a social trait, but it's separate from compassion. So you can
Okay.
have someone who has this extroversion, again, this assertiveness, this ability to influence people, but like very low in politeness, very low in compassion, and low in
Right.
empathy, you could say as well, because that's clustered together without that agreeableness. And that's where we get into narcissism. Someone who is very enthusiastic, like Keith Campbell uses the example of like, if there's a microphone, I'm going to grab it and get up on stage, right?
Right.
Like that's the enthusiastic person,
Okay.
but they lack empathy. And so they don't get feedback for how they treat people.
Okay. So zooming out a bit here, neuroticism governs your relationship with negative emotion and extroversion with positive emotion. Is that
Broadly speaking, yeah. So I
broadly?
mean,
Okay.
the neuroticism tells you like how fearful, anxious, depressed should I be per unit of roadblock in front of
Right.
me. Extroversion is how excited and stoked should I be per unit of affordance in front of me.
Okay. So it's there's a built-in kind of access here between extroversion and neuroticism, at least when it comes to the emotional front of how what is my negative emotion reaction to that? What is my positive emotion reaction to that? It's a calibration of sorts.
It is, and you can be like low extroversion, low neuroticism, high extroversion, high neuroticism. So like, I get really excited about the accomplishments and I get really
And
upset
I
about
get
the
really down.
setbacks.
So
Or if
they
you're
are
one or the other.
really all over the place.
So I'll do an aside here for just a moment. We're talking about 5 dimensions. I've used that word so many times, dimension, and I use it, um, with some thought behind it because, well, we live in a 3-dimensional world, right?
That's
We live
right.
in 3 dimensions. This is extremely complicated, the world that we live in. Like just 3 dimensions, there's a lot that can happen. There's a lot to keep track of.
Right.
Add in time to that, that's a 4th dimension. That's really, really complicated. Like the possibilities that we can have in 4 dimensions are staggering. I can't conceptualize anything apart from personality that's 5 dimensions or some obscure computer science problem.
Sure.
Right? 5 dimensions is so hard to wrap our head around, where you can be different in every single dimension, and people are.
Sure.
It's a profound level of variance.
Yeah, especially when you start investigating how these traits combine or separate and how that totally changes what someone may look like. Like even there, just automatically, I associate someone high in extroversion as being like low in neuroticism, but it's not necessarily the case. And someone who's high in both, totally different profile, even though it's just one little change, so to speak.
Sure.
Okay, so I think we're a little low on time here. So how about instead of going into the practical stuff, we'll do that later because this is a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
How what I want to wrap up here is how do people figure out what their profile is? Is it a test? Is it self-diagnosis? Is it a bit of everything?
Yeah. So listening to this conversation, you probably already have an idea of what your personality is,
Sure.
however imperfect it might be. Unfortunately, it's harder to take a test and assess your personality the more familiar you are with this framework, because then we
True.
kind of know, like, I want to be this way, I don't want to be that
Right.
way, influence someone.
I don't want to be an anxious mess, so
Right. And so, like, if you're watching this and you would like to know more, Peterson's test is the one that I would recommend. I think it's $10. Understandmyself.com, I believe, is the URL. It's going to give you it'll give you your percentile, so how you relate to others around you, and it'll explain a little bit what that means. for each of the 5 dimensions, and then all 10 facets as well, or the subtraits.
So I've given it to other people. I think it's really good. You like it a lot. There's another professor I know who studies this stuff for a living. He said it's by far the best one out there. I've taken some free ones. I thought they were fine. Like I think people can start there probably, but to me, the $10 one was really worth it. I got a lot out of it.
Especially if you don't have someone to sit there and walk you through all the implications of your personality. Right. It serves as that. It's like Jordan Peterson sitting next to you saying, this is kind of how you are, buddy.
Right.
That's how you stack up to others.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to share or say before we wrap up? This is a lot of info. Thank you for sharing. This is a great foundation. So
yeah, I hope it's been useful for people. I'd say this. I mean, once you get a decent understanding of these dimensions, of these traits, it'll change the way that you interact with people.
Yes.
Because you'll start to see, okay, I'm not dealing with a copy of myself here. I'm dealing with someone totally different from me. I'm going to check my assumptions because now I'm seeing that as this person reveals more of themselves to me,
right,
where they fall in relationship to myself. And so how can we be more productive as we're talking, perhaps as a result? Just to give one example. So it becomes fairly easy to type people, broadly speaking, once you learn these dimensions. So I would say put in the legwork to learn them if this is something you're interested in, and it will pay dividends.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Of all the systems I know, this is part of its attraction, is its simplicity in terms of using it. Like, even as you're listening to this, if you're brand new, you can probably already start to think of a number of people, and you can figure out at least half their traits pretty accurately. And just for example, like if you're dealing with someone neurotic, trying to be more, people don't like to deal with people who are always talking about how things could go wrong. And neurotic people need to learn how to curve that a little bit if they want, to get some of the results that they want.
Sure.
But just that fact of how sensitive they are to the ways things could go wrong gives you all the information of what you may need to help deal with that with them. Like,
right. Instead of judging them for it.
Right, exactly. And then people low in conscientiousness are like, it's really easy to judge a slob, and we all, we know that, but just knowing that fact that it's not as easy or natural for you as it is for them, and it's like really hard for them to commit to a schedule or a routine, things like that. So that, this is more of the application, the moral side of it, but really, like, if we're not studying personality types to understand each other and ourselves better, I don't really know what we're doing. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a great place to stop there. I know we had some more planned, but I think that'll be sufficient for now. So again, thank you for sharing, Wayne, on this. This was great, and I'm excited to share this with people who will take a listen. So thank you.
Thank you, John. It's been a blast, man.
All right, take care.